We're living in a world of endless abundance, and yet the vast majority of society is focusing on what they don't have, complaining. I live in America, arguably the most abundant country in all of history. People are like, oh, it's so hard. Money's so hard. Yes, it is. For a lot of people, it's really hard. But you know what is also true? Is even the wealthiest person 100 years ago didn't have a hot shower. There is no such thing. Hot showers were invented 50 years ago. Lived worse than homeless people does. They had less access to medicines, to just basic necessities. We had all sorts of crazy diseases. They hadn't invented soap yet. People were dying left and right from very curable diseases and bacteria and all sorts of stuff. We live in this era when quite literally anything is possible. Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. Folks, if you are alive, say holler. And I don't mean alive. I mean filled with life alive. I mean, I just want to do something with this life, this kind of feeling. If you're feeling that, then this episode is for you. And if you're not feeling that at all, if you're feeling depleted and you're feeling lack of focus, you don't know what to do, then this episode is also for you. You know why? Because this episode is for anybody who wants to break free from bad habits, from, let's say, pornography, let's say you're fighting in your marriage, whatever the case may be. If you want to break out of this self-destructive cycle, there is a core ingredient, and that ingredient is vitality. There is a way to create a life of extreme vitality where you're so filled with ideas and inspiration and desire and a longing for life itself, and you're willing to put in the work to create that life. This all happens when you're filled with vitality. But if you want to get vitality, there's a way, there's a method. And I get into that in this episode. And I do believe that this is non-negotiable. If you want to be not only happy, but if you want to be a thriving individual, if you want to have a radiant blessing, vitality is an essential ingredient. So I get into that in this episode, and I do it with you, and I do it for you. But also I do it by myself because this is a solo cast, but I hope this episode really helps. Welcome back, everybody. Andrew Love here. And today I am home alone. I am going to do this podcast by my big old self. I don't need nobody. I'm just going to do it myself, me, myself, and I. And here's why. Because I got to lock this episode down right now while it's still in me and while it's still busting out of me. Because I just got off a call with some guys and I have a group. I have a couple groups, actually. And it was a topic that I wrote down in my book. You see, if you're watching the video, check this out. Don't judge me. I have these books, okay? This is where I write down all my ideas, where I write my schedule, and I get them from all over the place. I always stock up. And this one I got from my wife. She's like, oh, you can have this, because she saw I ran out of one. I was going to get the next one. And she's like, no, just take this one. I was like, I felt like a little kid. It's like, Ma, because the mom wants you to wear this special shirt to school. It's like, Ma, I'm going to get beat up if I wear that shirt. She's like, no, you look great, honey. So if you can see the video, check this out. It says, follow your heart. So don't judge me on that. But in this book, if I write something down, I get it done. It's my magical book. And so in that book, a couple weeks ago, I said, I have a topic that I need to do on the podcast, but it's got to be the right time. I don't want to rush this. But I just had a group and I rambled on about this, and I realized that this is extremely important for all of the high noon world to hear about and to understand. Okay. And it's all about being alive. You see, what's the point? What's the point of life? To just get through it? I mean, some people would say that. And I would say couple 100,000 of years ago, that was the quintessence of life, is just not dying by being eaten by a large animal with big teeth. That's like, you made it. Amazing. You didn't die, because there's so many ways to die back then. But nowadays we're living very comfortably. And of course, there's many problems in this world, but at the same time, the average lifespan is in the 70s and 80s for most countries, right? But the point is not to just get through life and to just not die. That's horrific. You could be suffering your entire life. That's not a victorious life, right? So what is the point of life? Well, it's to be alive, right? It sounds stupid, but if you are filled with life, it means that you're engaging with your environment. You're having all sorts of creative ideas. Life is pouring through you every time you talk. You are like God. You are a creator. You're creating your own life. and you're creating like circumstances, and it's so invigorating. It truly is. But that's not our experience for the most part. From day to day, it really feels like a grind. You know what I'm saying? "Oh, I gotta get up." People say, I gotta get up. Okay, why? Because I gotta go to school or I gotta go to work. I gotta. There's a lot of gottas. Oh, why do you gotta do all this stuff? Because I need money. Why do you need money? Because I gotta eat food. Okay. That's fair enough, but that's what life is about, is doing a bunch of stuff so you can eat food. No, I gotta sleep. Okay. That's cool. You gotta sleep. Got that. But there's gotta be more to it, man. There's gotta be. And I know I'm hyperactive, but because I'm filled with life right now, I really feel it. And I want to unpack this. I don't want to just ramble incessantly about something that might seem very obvious, which is it's good to be alive. We should be filled with joy and gratitude. That's trite. It's obvious. Let's unpack vitality specifically. You see, in the divine principle, we talk about life elements and vitality elements. I hope if you haven't read this part of the divine principle or you haven't received a lecture, consider yourself unfortunate and get to it. Learn, come reach out to us, whatever. These concepts are life changing, right? But so life elements, you get them from, let's say, reading God's word. You're sitting or you're praying, you're having a really good prayer, and you're filled with something that is beyond yourself. It's like ideas, energy, emotions that transcend us, that we can have delivered to us by way of God's word, God's prayer, whatever. It gives us life itself. And what are we supposed to do with that life? When you're fired up because you had a good prayer, is that the point of the prayer? No. The point is turning that prayer into action, making it substance. And when we do, and we start living according to our ideals, that's when we get vitality elements. Those are the things that make us feel truly alive. And that means that we become life itself. And now compare that to sitting on a couch, staring at your phone, scrolling. Does that give you vitality? Absolutely not. Every scroll is like you're losing vitality, you're losing energy, you're losing yourself. The machine is taking over and you're losing your autonomy. You're losing the capacity for independent thought. You're losing your ability to choose your destiny and to really feel like it. But I want you to stop for a second, okay? Let's do an exercise together. And I want you to think about a really amazing day that where something truly profound happened. Like you heard something really great, you got great news, you got into some school that you really wanted to, something, okay? Think about how you felt when you heard this great news. Maybe you found out that you were going to have a baby. Maybe, I don't know what it is. You found out that you're going to be rich. I don't know. Whatever it is, that surge of possibility flows through you. I remember back in like 2003 or 4 or 5, something like that. Basically, my whole life since I was 10 years old, I wanted to move to Los Angeles, California. Hard stop. That was like my destiny. I knew I had to go there at some point and live there. I couldn't figure out how to do that in like a orderly way, so I just moved out there. But I grew up in Canada, so there's some legal stuff, so I could only stay there for a bit. But in that time, I met some friends and I gained a lot of trust. And so I went back to Canada and I said bye to all my friends. And they're like, we're never going to see you again. I was like, trust me, I'm going to be back, but I'm going to do this the right way. And I just had this sense of destiny, right? And so I applied for a visa, got everybody that I knew who was like remotely famous or had some production company to say that I was great. And I got any newspaper clippings or whatever at that time. Remember, this is like 2003 or 4 or 5 or something. We didn't have the internet, just newspaper clippings, whatever, that could prove that I was amazing at what I did. At that time, it was comedy. And I sent it to a lawyer, and I gave a bunch of money and I worked so hard on this case. And I remember I was in Canada for 11 months. And at a certain point, it seemed kind of doubtful that I was going to be able to get back in on a visa. But I got a call from the lawyer. And this is after I paid him a lot of money and worked really hard. And he said, I don't know how you did it, but you got the visa. And I just remember I was standing up and I fell to my knees and I just started bawling my eyes out. And then after, I was just filled with like, I did it. I did it. My life culminated to this point, and it was the best feeling ever. And of course, a couple days later, I was thinking about his statement. I was like, wait a second. He said, I don't know how you did it. I thought he said it was like a sure deal, but apparently he had his doubts. But anyway, it seemed like a long shot, but it was all there. And I felt like, man, this is before I believed in God or anything. I was just like, this is my destiny, right? So in that moment of time, I felt like the world was open to me and I felt so like I can do anything. This is what our life can be like. Okay. When we are filled with vitality, it means that we are filled with life itself, and life is filled with endless opportunities and people and situations for us to experience, all of which we're closed off to when we're stuck in this spectrum of emotions that's just the mundane. The mundane is like, you can have ice cream, you appreciate ice cream, it's good ice cream, but it's not amazing. It's just ice cream. It's like, wow, this is really good. But it's just calories, right? Or you're having a conversation with your parents and you're like, yeah, they're just people all there. It's just mom, it's just dad, whatever. But you don't really see, these are the people that are made up of trillions of cells that gave birth to me. And I owe my very existence to these people. And you know why? Because it's hard to get to that place. That is exceptional. That is filled with vitality. But that's where life is when we are engaged and interested, when we're building a life of intentionality. And that's the high noon way. This is what it means when you don't need to fight an addiction anymore, when you don't need to fight your life anymore, because you are building your life piece by piece, decision by decision. This is when sexual integrity becomes so much fun, because it's building. How much more of God can I feel in my marriage? Right? If you're blessed, how much more as a single person can I just experience life flowing through me as a young person with my whole life ahead of me? Right? This is countercultural. We're living in a world of endless abundance, and yet the vast majority of society is focusing on what they don't have, complaining. I live in America, arguably the most abundant country in all of history. We can go anywhere and do anything. And yes, things are tough. There's tension for sure. There's money tension, whatever. But that's only when you're looking down. There's also, I was thinking about this. People are like, oh, it's so hard. Money's so hard. Yes, it is. For a lot of people, it's really hard. But you know what is also true? Is even the wealthiest person 100 years ago didn't have a hot shower. There was no such things. Hot showers were invented 50 years ago. Okay. They say that a king 500 years ago lives worse or lived worse than homeless people does. They had less access to medicines, to just basic necessities. We had all sorts of crazy diseases. They hadn't invented soap yet. So people were dying left and right from very curable diseases and bacteria and all sorts of stuff. We live in this era when quite literally anything is possible. The possibility of us living on another planet is on the table. We don't know how far away or anything, but interplanetary life is very much a part of the conversation. It's not like, they're putting random people in space now, right? They just did that again, like just doing that casually, right? And I'm talking about external things here, but in terms of
Quick pause. If you're serious about your future blessing, but not really preparing for it, then this is your moment. Don't do it alone, guys. Go to highnoon.org.
okay, changing your own fate. Not so long ago, people were stuck because the belief that humanity had was if you're born of a certain character, let's say you're an angry person, you're an angry child, then that's how you're stuck. Now, because of, the world and because of science and because of psychology and all this, there have been people that have been chipping away at this. And now we have at our disposal the ability to choose how we want to be, how we want to show up. So you don't have to be stuck thinking you're stupid or that you're sick or whatever. You can change all of this. This is all on the table, but only for those who are alive enough to fix something in their life. I'm learning about Roald Dahl. This sounds really random, but Roald Dahl he's the most famous and read children's author ever. Okay. He sold the most children's books out of anybody ever. He wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and The Great Glass Elevator and The Big Friendly Giant, Matilda, all these classics, right? He also incidentally was a spy for the British government. It's crazy. He had a crazy life. Anyway, when his child got hit by a bus, it was a really tragic situation. He was an author and he's just kind of like that kind of thinking. And his son was in the hospital for like a year or something, and they kept on saying that we don't have this one thing. It's like a tube for, I think, his heart, and they just had these tubes, but they didn't really work well. And he's telling them we have to fix this, and nobody's fixing it. So he's like, I'm gonna fix it. So you have this guy who's an author who's like, guess what? I'm going to solve my son's problem. So you know what he did? He talked to a doctor, and then he talked to a children's toy manufacturer. The three of them sat in a room together for months and months and months until they invented a new tube that, instead of made out of plastic, it was made out of metal. I think it was stainless steel. Completely revolutionized not only the medical field for his son, but apparently saved the lives of 2,000 other kids within the next 2 years, right? And he has no medical background whatsoever. I'm telling you this is because he was filled with the desire to save his son's life. And out of that, he got superpowers. We have access to the same superpowers, people. Okay. But only when we are truly, truly alive. And when we have vitality flowing through us, we really feel as though anything is possible. And you know why? Because that's our native language. That is who we are. That's our identity as God's children. Like, we see ourselves as humans first. Why don't you scale back a layer deeper and to the place where actually we're spiritual beings who come from God? If that's actually true, then it means that everything's on the table. We can be like God. And of course, you can turn into Hitler or some maniacal fiend who starts to interpret that to mean ultimate power over people. No, no, no. What I'm saying is we have the power of endless creativity. We can cure diseases. We can do all sorts of stuff, but only when we're truly alive and filled with vitality. Okay. So that's a little bit of a rambling, but here's the practical side of this conversation. When you are filled with life, then you recognize what helps you to sustain that life. When you're filled with vitality and you do certain things, then it just ramps you up even more, or it sustains your just unrelenting quest for greatness. So, for instance, if you wake up in a certain way. Lately, I've been waking up naturally. I've been really doing some crazy stuff with my sleep in a really great way. I've been having a lot of breakthroughs, but I've been waking up naturally without an alarm clock at about 6 o'clock. And now my wife and I, first thing we do is we go out for a walk together. Nobody's awake in our neighborhood, just walking hand in hand, just talking about random stuff, looking at the sun, not directly at the sun, but it's good for your circadian rhythm. And so here we are having this great experience. And that makes me feel so alive, much more than the opposite. If I were to wake up and just turn on my phone, start scrolling, it would steal my sense of optimism, which is vitality, my sense of hope, which is vitality, my ideas that I had for the day, like I could do this or this or this, gone. Because what? Now I'm worried about, I don't know, some famine or some drought or something that social media is telling me to think about and focus on, comparing myself to this person or that person. Now I've lost all that makes me filled with vitality. So our choices really, really do matter. And this is, again, sound like a broken record here, but the idea of a North Star goal is to get better at answering how to live my life from the moment I wake up to the moment I fall asleep in a way that it complements my vitality, that gives me a sense of life. Because when you are locked in, then you don't need porn anymore if you're struggling with porn. Then you can see the answers for the problems if you're blessed, if you're married. The answers come to you not through fighting, but through gratitude, through seeing the other person through new eyes, re-experiencing your marriage through a new perspective, right? And you only have access to that when you stop being your old mundane spectrum self and when you start living in the highs. Okay. And this is very much accessible to us. And I wish that upon all of you, but it requires training. Okay. So I'm going to kind of end soon because the solo casts feel longer because it's not a conversation, it's a rant. But I was just talking to somebody about gratitude, the importance of gratitude. And we have entire episodes about that here. But as a recap, when you start to recognize the power of gratitude, it is our superpower because through gratitude, you're able to see hope in any situation. It's the Viktor Frankl effect, a man's search for meaning, right? This idea of like, even in the most dire of situations, like a concentration camp, if you gain the right perspective, you can still be hopeful. And that gives you vitality and that keeps you going. It keeps you moving. True Father talks a lot about this, about Hungnam. How do you get through 3 years of an internment camp? You have to play games of gratitude and really lock into what am I grateful for? Okay. But here's the catch. If I just tell you this and then you go and you just start praying for, I'm thankful for this and that, chances are you're not going to feel much of anything. Because if you could imagine your gratitude fire is like a wet log right now. If it's like a really untrained muscle. And just because you go to, let's say you haven't worked out in 10 years, just because you go to the gym once and your muscles feel really sore, you look in the mirror, you're not going to see any difference. You're not going to see, just took 10 sit ups and my abs are back. No, it's going to take a while, right? But even that, I know we use gym analogies. I was just ribbing Benji today about how often we use gym analogies. But when my sons just started doing that ninja warrior thing where you kind of do monkey bars and all this, and after their first time, my son, my eldest, kept on saying for a couple days, "Man, my abs hurt so much." And I was like, "Yes, because you're alive. Your abs, you challenged your abs, you woke them up. And this is what it feels like to be alive sometimes. Sometimes there's aches and pains, but it's because they're coming back to life. And like that's what it's like with gratitude. In the beginning, you'll try to be grateful and you'll just be in your head and you're like, I don't know, I guess I'm grateful for this or that, but you probably won't feel anything in your heart. You probably won't feel anything in your spirit. Keep at it, finding new ways to be grateful for life itself, for the people in your life. It'll start to more natural. You'll start to see more opportunities to be grateful. But what this is doing is it's changing your focus from the mundane, from the task-oriented self, and allowing opportunities for new emotions to come in. This is all giving you a glimpse of life. Keep on stoking that fire, right? It's like starting a fire. Okay, the wet log analogy. You have a wet log. First, you got to dry it out. Okay. Then, in order to create a fire, imagine you have two rocks. You start hitting those, you're not going to see any sparks for a while. It takes a while to get sparks. And then eventually, sparks start really coming. And then eventually, they're big sparks. And eventually, a spark takes root. You start a little fire, and then you start stoking that fire until it turns into a big, raging fire. That's what it's like to be filled with vitality. But it's not from 0 to 100, which is what most people like to think. They're waiting for the one thing. I just need to do this one thing and everything will be okay. No, they say within 2 to 3 weeks of any major event happening, you go back to your baseline. So, worst case, it's like you win the lottery within 2 to 3 weeks. It's like life is just feels the exact same as it ever was. You have more stuff, you have more money in the bank, but you feel the exact same. The opposite is true too. You could have a death in the family and it's all, everything goes wild for 2 to 3 weeks, but humans are very resilient, right? And we come back to our baseline, to what's normal. So rather than wishing and praying for some cataclysmic or some amazing thing to happen so that your entire baseline gets taken up a couple notches, instead of that, because that's not how this works, you need to just raise your baseline. And that's through gratitude, right? So if you want to be alive, you need to be grateful. And if you want to be grateful, practice gratitude. And I'm telling you, this will help you so much in terms of figuring out then how to start constructing your life. Because if you try to figure out how to build a life of sexual integrity from a place of suffering and struggle, the good answers aren't there. You need to first start stoking the fires of gratitude, these really heavenly emotions that transcend us, right? That really take us to our native language, which is love. And then when we start hearing those echoes of love and we start to feel like alive again and that vitality starts kicking in, that's when we start to say, okay, how do I want to set my life up? So that means the foods that I eat, the amount that I use my phone, and how do I use my phone? What do I use it for? Right? The type of conversations that I expose myself to, the type of friends that I hang around with, how much I spend indoors versus outdoors, sitting versus standing and walking. All this stuff matters in order to be a living, vital person. Okay, I feel like I've gone over this ad nauseum, so I'm going to stop. But please understand that vitality is life. And life, when we're truly living, flows through us. And when we're truly living, that's when we want to stop escaping. We don't need to escape anymore. That's when porn becomes irrelevant. That's when we're just connected to our life and the people in it. So if you're in a marriage, that's when the resolution takes place, when we ourselves stop waiting for the other person to change and we just find a way to be grateful for them. That's when the healing begins, right? For the self, for others, for our relationship with the world around us. So please, the message here is really be careful to take stock of all the things that are stealing from your vitality. I can tell you there's certain foods that I can eat that will just deplete me of energy so fast. Like junk food for me, I'm donezo, right? Watching too many movies or scrolling kills the spirit. Find what these things are that kill your vitality, and also find out the food that you eat that makes you feel really healthy and alive, type of conversations that you need to have that with what type of people that really make you feel alive. Like all of this factors in to radiating. And that's what life is about. Okay, that's it. I'm truly going to go. Hope this was helpful. Good pleasure.
A strong marriage doesn't start at the blessing. It starts right now in how you live, how you grow, and who you surround yourself with. If you've been passive, unsure, or just hoping things will work out in your future blessing, this is your chance to change that. To prepare with purpose, to walk with others who are taking this seriously. If that's the kind of foundation you want in your future, guys, check us out. Join our community at highnoon.org, totally free. We will see you there.